Hello, and welcome to the first episode of UAP Investigative Inquiry. My name is Dirk van Tonder. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about a far lesser known type of UFO, that is, the ones which literally appear to be alive. In his 1958 book, titled Sky Creatures, Living UFOs, Trevor James Constable states, "The UFO problem is an unfortunate term that mystifies rather than clarifies the situation by lumping together a wide variety of dissimilar phenomena under one all-encompassing label. The general public and most ufologists understand the label just one way. For them, the term refers to intelligently constructed machines for interplanetary or interstellar transportation of aliens. UFOs, they assume, are spacecraft from another world. Almost no one thinks in any other terms. Nevertheless, there is an approach to UFOs, the approach I have pioneered, that allows many UFO sightings to be sensibly and naturally explained in a way free from the constraints of such a mechanistic conception. Quite simply, many UFOs are living organisms. They are biological aeroforms living in the sky, unknown to official science, but long known to occult science, which fulfill in all respects the statement made by Dr. Carl Sagan, quoted above. I know, I have seen them and photographed them, and in response to Dr. Sagan, therefore I say, your revolution is here." Beginning in 1957, along with Dr. James O. Woods, a fellow explorer of the invisible realm in which these strange creatures inhabit, I took hundreds of still pictures and motion picture films of them. This photographic evidence was obtained with standard 35mm cameras, infrared film, and various filters, and a Bolex movie camera in the case of the films. In this way, we opened up a vast new field of life that has been veiled from normal human visual ability. In 1975, I developed a new technique, which I call the reverse spectrum technique, that uses Ektachrome Super 8mm movie film and an 18A ultraviolet filter to penetrate the dark portion of the spectrum, of the light spectrum. That is, the portion not visible to human eyes, in which these strange aerial creatures live. What I have learned can be summarized as follows. These creatures, or critters as I prefer to call them, are amoeba-like life forms existing in the plasma state. They are not solid, liquid, nor gas. Rather, they exist in the fourth state of matter, plasma, as living heat substance at the upper border of physical nature. They consist of calcium and fluids, the metal and the suds both being in the plasmatic state. My pictures show that these aerial fauna are like unicellular life forms, normally hidden from us because they are in the infrared range of the electromagnetic spectrum. Critters occasionally emerge into the visible portion of the spectrum, pulsating with a reddish to orange glow, sometimes with blinding intensity. At such times, they are invariably identified as UFOs, which they are, of course, although they are not constructed craft. They are living creatures. Failure to recognize this and to distinguish creatures from craft in UFO reports has deeply confused UFO research. As living organisms, these critters appear to be an elemental branch of evolution, probably older than most life on Earth, dating from the time when the planet was more gaseous and plasmatic than solid. They are part of what occultists term elementals. They live invisibly like fish in the ocean of the atmosphere. They will probably one day be better classified as belonging to the general field of macrobiology or even macrobacteria, inhabiting the aerial ocean we call the sky. Critters are normally beyond the range of human vision for three reasons. First, as mentioned, their native state of existence is in the infrared. Second, their native habitat is the stratosphere and beyond, at distances far greater than the unaided eyesight can see. Last, they propel themselves bioenergetically at extremely fast speeds, often appearing like meteors before disappearing from view. Critters, consisting of matter in its most tenuous form, have the ability to change their density and thereby pass from one level of tangibility to another. Thus, they sometimes do appear in the visible portion of the spectrum. Some of these variable density creatures have been seen up close on the ground in full physical density, as I will document later chapters. When the late Ivan Sanderson, the well-known naturalist and investigator of the unknown, saw some of my photos, he said in his book, Uninvited Visitors, "They don't look like machines at all. They look to a biologist horribly like unicellular life forms, complete in some cases with nuclei, nucleoli, vacuoles, and all the rest." Critters range in size from that of a coin to at least half a mile in diameter. The mysterious Foo Fighters that World War II and Korean War pilots reported as miniature UFOs can be fully explained as critters in the visible state. So can the mysterious phenomena of ball lightning. Critters travel in a pulsatory fashion, swelling and shrinking cyclically as they move through the air, much as we pulsate with our heartbeat and swell and shrink with our lung movements. Although they can change their form like amoebas, they generally are discerned as discs or spheroids. They have a diaphanous structure, transparent like mica or the sheerest cloth, which allows a limited view of their interior. Noted British author Harold T. Wilkins said my photos reminded him of looking into the side of an aquarium tank. As do most plasmas, critters give a solid radar return, even when unseen by the naked eye. This characteristic explains those many UFO reports where fighter pilots, scrambled aloft to intercept unidentified incoming objects, have found nothing when vectored to the location by ground control radar operators, even though the radars have continued to track the objects on their scopes. The fundamental characteristic of everything that is alive, as opposed to what is inert, is pulsation. To official biology, pulsation remains inaccessible, inscrutable, a mystery as vast as UFOs themselves. Prompted by observed pulsations of UFOs sighted at high altitudes by its pilots, the US Air Force once broached the idea of space animals in a public release dated 27th April 1949, stating that the objects appeared to behave more like animals than anything else. The airmen who observed these aeroforms and expressed the feeling that they were living organisms were far closer to the truth than scientists in the grandiose discipline of exobiology have far yet come. A comprehensive UFO theory must incorporate living aeroforms within its structure, for such living creatures do exist, have been extensively photographed by myself and others, and are now being recorded inadvertently on NASA videotapes in the lunar environment. NASA's exobiologists literally do not know what they are looking at. So intent have they been on establishing the sterility of the moon. Many persons have theorized that UFOs are alive, including Kenneth Arnold, who put the term flying saucer into the language. I happen to be the Earthman who first photographed these life forms extensively, proving their existence and simultaneously penetrating their bedrock involvement in the UFO mystery. A comprehensive UFO theory must include them, with all their evolutionary portent for the new life sciences and their power to shatter some of the mechanistic man's cardinal illusions about the origins of the Earth. The existence of these organisms, as I noted at the beginning, seems to be essentially plasmatic. That is, having their form expressed in heat substance. Being plasmatic, they are capable of returning radar echoes, and often do. These things may be read more or less directly from dozens of photographs of these critters that we have made. Motion pictures we have made verified that these plasmatic organisms are capable of velocities and changes in shape and size that render worthless any attempt to handle them with the mechanistic mode of mentation. No comprehensive UFO theory can ever be formulated that does not include biological UFOs, along with the concept of intelligently controlled craft of some kind. Establishment ufology has clung tightly to its 2+2 assertion that UFOs must be ships from other planets or outer space, and all purportedly objective investigation is biased toward proving this foregone conclusion. Colonel Smythe was not the first man to see the critters of our atmosphere in modern times. A number of years prior to the Smythe sighting on Everest, an American named Don Wood Jr. got a closer and more terrifying look at a couple of these critters. He saw them in full physical density and in light reflecting negative polarity as a result of his hobby interest in flying. The experience shook him sufficiently to make him keep his counsel about the event for several decades. Mr. Wood's story was originally published in Ray Palmer's publication, Flying Saucers, in October 1959. Few people have done more to advance ufology through the years than the dogged and able Ray Palmer, an individual who sacrificed much in life. In order to keep publishing material from which orthodox publishers recoil, Mr. Wood's experience found the light of day thanks to Ray Palmer's open-mindedness, which I am happy to salute by reproducing the Wood sighting here. Mr. Wood states, "I must write to you of what happened to me in 1925, which I think solves most UFO reports. I've never told this to anyone, but can get a signed affidavit if needed. 4 of us were flying old Jenny's aircraft over the Nevada desert. One plane was a 2-seater, the one I was in. We landed on Flat Mesa near Battle Mountain, Nevada. The mesa is about 5,000 square feet and the walls are too steep to climb unless a lot of work is done. We wanted to see what was on top of this place. We landed at 1 p.m. and while walking about the top of this place, we noticed something coming in for a landing. It was about 8 feet across and was round and flat like a saucer. The undersides were a reddish color. It skidded to a stop about 30 feet away. This next you won't believe, and I don't care, but it's the truth. We walked up to the thing, and it was some animal like we've never seen before. It appeared to be hurt, and as it breathed, the top would rise and fall, making a half-foot hole all around it like a clam opening and closing. Quite a hunk had been chewed out of one side of this room, and a sort of metal-looking froth issued. When it saw us, it breathed frantically and rose up only a few inches, only to fall back to earth again. It was moist and glistened on the top side. We could see no eyes nor legs. After a 20-minute rest, it started pulsating once more. And so help me, the thing grew as bright as hell, except where it was hurt. It had a mica-like shell body. It tried to rise up again, but sank back down again. Then we saw a large, round shadow fall on us. We looked up and ran. Coming in was a much larger animal, 30 feet across. It paid no attention to us, but settled itself over the small one. 4 sucker-like tongues settled on the little one, and the big one got so dazzling bright you couldn't even look at it. Both rose straight up and were out of sight in a second. They must have been traveling 1,000 miles an hour to get so high so fast. When we walked over, there was an awful stench, and the frothy stuff the little one had bled looked like fine aluminium wire. There was more frothy, wiry stuff in a 30-foot circle where the big one had breathed. The stuff finally melted in the sun, and we took off. So help me, this thing was an animal. I have never told this story before, as we knew no one would believe us. I only write now because this animal would be one big 30-foot light if seen at night. I don't expect belief, but I simply had to write. In the same article, Mr. Edwards related a similar incident at a New Jersey Cape that occurred in 1950. When UFOs were seen there repeatedly, the owner of the only house on the Cape, a very famous writer, notified the government. The next morning, he and his family were surprised to find 3 radar towers mounted on trucks, hidden in the brush along the beach. Why were they there? One of the officers explained that radar made the sources stagger, and they hoped to be able to bring one down if they could get enough beams on the disc at close range. The radar did stagger the discs later that day, but did not bring them down. The discs sped away, and the radar trucks were withdrawn a few days later. There are significant conclusions that may be drawn from this encounter, dovetailing with what has been advanced theoretically earlier in this book. Once again, there was the cyclic appearance of the objects in a certain area, a basic behavioral pattern of animals. This cyclic pattern was well enough established to justify assignment of several radar units to the area. Radar was directed at the objects, and it was known in advance to those in charge of the radar that the pulsed radiation of the radar transmitters made UFOs stagger. At this point, let us review from our earlier discussion just what radar is, and let us never forget its nature as long as we delve into the UFO mystery. Radar is a tremendously powerful beam of pulsed electronic energy. Even a portable military radar could have an output power of 30 kilowatts or more. 3 radars were employed in this case. Pulsed or chopped electromagnetic energy has a known effect in stimulating living tissue. Carried far enough, this stimulation leads to a radiation burn. There are also extensive, but as yet only dimly understood interfaces between living organisms and the microwave spectrum. Now, since the writing of this book in 1958, far more scientific research has gone into the effects of artificial electromagnetic fields and radio frequency radiation upon living tissue of humans and animals. It used to be thought that only ionizing radiation was harmful, such as that from X-rays, cosmic rays, and nuclear reactions producing gamma rays. But now all of the latest scientific research indicates, without a doubt, that radio frequency radiation, even from our wireless devices, such as cell phones, Wi-Fi routers, cell phone base stations, induce detrimental effects upon human and animal biology. And this leads credence to what has been established so far, that biological UFOs are indeed affected by radar radiation. Returning to the incident at the Cape, let us note that there were such beams of energy to be directed upon our Earth-built airborne machines, there would be no known effect upon their functioning. Radar beams have no effect upon the propulsion or mechanical integrity of aircraft, dirigibles, helicopters, or any other known man-made aerial conveyance. Radars of any power presently known to man cannot cause any known man-made aircraft to stagger. Yet the UFOs in this incident did stagger, visibly and incontrovertibly. Furthermore, the officer in charge of the radar forecast and anticipated this reaction. Consider the word stagger itself. Living experience is our faithful guide here. We stagger if we are struck by lightning. We stagger if we touch bare house wiring and if we put our hand into a modulator circuit of a radar set. The source of the pulsed voltage that produces the radar's electromagnetic radiation, we could be sent staggering several yards and possibly would die from shock. Since such reactions do not occur in a corpse, they must be deemed to be a clash between biological energy and electromagnetic energy. All training, common sense, and experience in the operation and maintenance of radar leads to great care in avoiding contact with these voltages that stagger. This may be seen as the reaction of a human biosystem to something lethal. Therefore, we should anticipate that anything biological, whether known to official science or not, would be similarly staggered by blasts of pulsed radiation. Staggering now appears less as an effect upon some hypothetical power system or engine than as a direct biological reaction to something lethal. The staggered UFOs did not return to be staggered again, indicating the presence of something akin to memory in their makeup. A radar serviceman who touches a hot portion of a radar set has his memory similarly impressed. He avoids repeating a painful experience. Interpreted in this direct way, the evidence implies that the UFOs off the New Jersey Cape were biological. Surely we can now see the functional connection between radar and living organisms being made to illuminate by this pulsed electromagnetic radiation. The radiation was not in their environment in the previous known history of this planet. Ask yourself how many thousands of UFOs have been light manifestations rather than structured objects. Biological UFOs obviously do not like radar, and it is eminently probable that these atmospheric creatures of tenuous composition illuminate if they get too much of it. That is, they act as if they have received a radiation burn. Step by step, the new knowledge unravels the mystery where mechanism in all its over-financed glory and prestige produces only befuddlement and an endless evasion of the essential. The detrimental effect of radar upon UFOs is also corroborated by Colonel Philip Corso, who in his 1997 book titled The Day After Roswell states, "There was much speculation that it was a combination of the desert lightning storm and our persistent tracking radars at Alamogordo and the 509th that helped bring down the alien vehicle over the New Mexico desert in 1947. Significant among those who came to accept that UFOs are critters was the man who touched off the whole powder keg, Kenneth Arnold. As coiner of the term flying saucer, he has won immortality, but by the early 1960s he was nowhere near as puzzled as when he was on 24th of June 1947 when he saw a formation of these saucers near Mount Rainier. In November 1962, his views on UFOs sounded as though they had been lifted bodily out of my 1958 book, They Live in the Sky. Writing in Ray Palmer's Flying Saucers magazine, Mr. Arnold said, After some 14 years of extensive research, it is my conclusion that the so-called unidentified flying objects that have been seen in our atmosphere are not spaceships from another planet at all, but are groups and masses of living organisms that are as much a part of our atmosphere and space as the life we find in the oceans. The only major difference in the space and the atmospheric organisms is that they have the natural ability to change their densities at will. John P. Besor, in July of 1947, offered a theory to the US Air Force to explain the glowing disks seen by Kenneth Arnold earlier that year. Claimed Besor, "There is a saying that nature abhors a vacuum. If the seas of our earth are swarming with varieties of living things, both great and small, is it not logical to assume that the sea of our sky abounds with sundry forms of living things, likewise both great and small, of varied shapes, but adaptable to their celestial environment? Some may be quite invisible, others translucent, others opaque, still others capable of changing, chameleon-like, from one color to another, from one form to another, from visibility to complete invisibility, all in one movement." Emery Smith was a man who claims to have worked in some of these secret, deep underground, military base projects, black projects, and he claims to have been involved in the autopsy of some 3,000 alien or extraterrestrial beings, or at least tissue samples thereof. This is what he had to say about his experience with a biological UFO.
Because of the tissue regeneration stuff I was involved with, a lot of the craft that I was kind of brought into different projects to look at the craft, because the craft were actually alive.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
The craft were alive.
The craft were alive, and they were conscious, yes.
This is similar to what we heard from David Adair,
Yes.
where he described going to Area 51 and seeing this power system that was actually a living being.
Yes.
But it was this very large thing that had it looked like a skeleton over the surface of it. It had like tissue components, but it also had technology components. It was some weird blend of technology and tissue.
It's right. And it's already started. And I was part of that movement too, where we formulated tissue into titanium. It's called osseointegration.
Really?
Yeah. So that's a good one to get into at some point, because that's what led us in the underground projects to say, man, if we can have tissue and titanium to be together, and I can make your bone tissue and titanium, you're going to be pretty strong, Dave. It's going to be hard for me to break that bone. And then add stem cells to that and platelet-rich plasma, which increases bone density up to sometimes 10 times.
Wow.
Your own bone. Keep that in mind.
So that sounds a lot like Wolverine in the X-Men movies.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's osseointegration, where they just basically, made him all these steel protective plates, but he also had a super ability to heal very quickly.
Right.
And that's the secret. That's what they all want to know. How do we have no downtime? And now, not have any downtime, and not just for like the super soldier programs I was part of. I'm talking about the soldier programs that you don't hear about, the more upper level, cabal majestic type, secret corporation levels, where they're trying to anti-age you. And now that this new protein has just been discovered, A2M, alpha-2 macroglobulin,
Yeah.
holy moly, they just turned back time. And now that that's out, I can tell you right now, probably in 5 to 10 years, it'll probably take 10 years for the FDA. What this does is it's a protease inhibitor, which means it blocks all inflammation, so the body can heal itself. See, everything you have that you need to survive forever or for a very long time is already in your body. The problem is these fields around us and the foods we eat, everything is poisoned.
Right.
So it makes us have inflammation. And I don't care if you're in a car accident or if you have a disease, It all starts with inflammation. Now, if I can stop inflammation, your body will heal itself naturally.